Hey everybody, welcome fans to tuning in today. My name is Adam. I am a guest today, and during my daytime, I am a community relations manager at the Southern California Gas Company. And through my work with corporate giving and community partnerships, I volunteer my time as vice chair on the board of directors with CAUSE. And CAUSE stands for Center for Asian Americans United for Self-Empowerment, a 501c3 community-based nonprofit focusing on advancing political and civic engagement of the Asian Pacific American community through nonpartisan voter outreach, training, and education, in addition to leadership development in the greater Los Angeles area. CAUSE has been around since 1993, and from our board chair, Charlie Wu, and in partnership with our executive director, Nancy Yap. Today, I'm here with a few of our panelists. I'm going to introduce them and let them introduce themselves, where they're from, what they do. We have Rams safety Jordan Fuller, and then next we'll have Rams legend Pisa, and our next shark's Benny. So if you don't mind, Jordan.
So I'm Jordan Fuller. I'm from a small town in New Jersey. It's called Norwood, way up North Jersey. Great food, small town, but yeah, grew up there. Have a pretty successful family, but yeah, I'm just the next in line, basically, playing the safety in the Rams. So
I'm Pisa Tinoisamoa, former St. Louis Ram when they were back there. But yeah, I'm from Southern California. I'm honored to be here. I coach high school football at Mission Hills in San Marcos, California.
My name is Benny Liu. I'm the founder and CEO of NextShark.com. We are a leading publication focused on Asian American news, and our reporters and teams we've been on the cusp of reporting a lot of the anti-Asian rhetoric and hate crimes that have been happening since the start of 2020. Personally, I'm from the Bay Area, born and raised there originally from Chinese immigrant parents. There's an interesting story where my mom actually swam from mainland China to Hong Kong to escape the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution. She got caught the first 2 times and had to go to jail, and then the third try she made it and came to the US as like a refugee. And so Asian American identity is something that I hit close to my heart, and I'm very, very glad to be here and amongst like all these incredible panelists.
Thank you for sharing, everybody. Benny, we actually have a lot of comment on that. My father's side is the same thing. My grandmother swam 3 times, got caught twice, from China to Hong Kong to find my dad during the war. And the 3rd time's the charm, and she found my father. So a lot of Asian American stories that we share. But we're here today to celebrate Asian excellence in LA and how to better alliance the AAPI community. And how do we stop Asian hate? So we partnered with Benny from NextShark to help ensure the authenticity and impactful conversations today. So if we can start today with Benny and Pisa, what do you love about your culture, and what can you share with us? Something that we don't know, or maybe we do know. We would love to hear more about that.
Pisa, you want to go first?
Yeah, well, okay, I'll start. I'm Samoan, so Pacific Islander descent. I'm actually one of the smaller Samoans, and what I love about my culture is just how loving we are. Like I said, I'm one of the smaller ones, so typically when you see a Samoan, they're big dudes, and they look mean, but once you get past that little, that little rough part there, we're actually loving people. And that's something that I enjoyed even in the league. After the game, you might not know every Samoan or Tongan or Fijian who's out on the field, but it's something like when we see each other, we give that little head nod like, hey, I see you, representing for our respective islands. And for me, that was always one of those things that I always loved, running into, other professionals who were, from like what we considered a small island to now the big time in the US. So for me, I always enjoyed that and loved about our culture, just the community, the small, tight-knit community feel that we always had, even in the professional level. So that was big for me.
Yeah, so I'm ethnically Chinese American. And what I love about my culture is, I'll do an easy one. The food is great. I love Chinese food, obviously. And I like the culture in terms of like how we're so, I think it's not just Chinese people, but like East Asians, we're very collective and very community oriented. And I think that that's something that I definitely feel if I ever, go back to the motherland or anything and meet my family and everything. So yeah, just very loving. And I think and I love how diverse it is. I think that when I look back and actually do a little bit of studying in the motherland, I mean, so many different regions could be so different, and languages could be so different. And so that's really what I like about it.
Thank you both for sharing that. If I can give a quick, brief background about Los Angeles and the history of AAPIs, as you guys, a lot of you guys probably like grew up in the U.S., read through history books about how the Chinese immigrated in the 1850s during the gold rush or during the expansion of the railroad tracks. And so, on my family, my mom's side, we're considered 4 or 5 generations, actually 5 generations. In California, my mom's side, we've been here since the 1850s. My great-great was a houseboy in San Francisco. My great-grandfather and my grandfather were merchants in San Francisco. They had shops in Chinatown in San Francisco. But then the Exclusion Act happened. Unfortunately, there was racism that the Chinese were taking too many of the jobs and separated that. And my grandma, unfortunately in Hong Kong, was separated for about almost 12 to 15 years. And so my uncle and my mom are almost 15 to 20 years apart. And so that's part of the American history. And then after the Chinese came, which was in Los Angeles, they built the old Chinatown, where now is Union Station. And unfortunately, they demolished that area to make Union Station and the 101 freeway. And the new Chinatown is now where near Dodger Stadium is at. And so after the Chinese immigrated, then you had the Japanese that immigrated in the late 1860s and the early 1900s. They came, they started in Boyle Heights, going toward, the other parts of downtown. Unfortunately, when Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, the Japanese that had been here already for first or second generation were forced to assemble in Pomona, Santa Anita racetracks. They were actually put in the horse stalls, unfortunately, and relocated to other states that they've never been to, Utah, Oregon, and Idaho. And then after that, you had Korean Americans and the Filipinos and Southeast Asians that came. People don't know about the Filipinos that were actually part of the farm workers movement. They were up in Central Coast, and they weren't as vocal as Latinos, but they all started at the same time. But if we can shift back to our panelists, Jordan, you've been here in Los Angeles now for over a year and work closely with Taylor Rapp, who's Chinese American. What have you noticed about the AAPI community here in Los Angeles, and what are your thoughts about that? You're muted.
Jordan's muted.
I apologize. Well, first of all, just my first interaction with Taylor was just through a text, just trying to introduce myself and just tell him I wanted to learn as much as I could from him and stuff like that. Just like right off the bat, just his response was great. He just said like, I would love the room, love being around the guys, and he just really just welcomed me in from jump. There's like safety competition and everything. But like whenever I had a question about anything, he was the first one to try to help me out. So that's something like I definitely like love about Taylor, and he's like a great football player. Like there's so many things he can do. I'm just like, man, one day I'm gonna get there. One day I'm gonna get there, So I look up to him in a bunch of different ways on the football field, but as a human being too, I think he's an even better human. So that's really important to me, and I just wanted to put that out there, just how much I care about Taylor, and just as a human being, like off the field, like we have a great relationship on the field, but it extends to off the field. But like noticing like being in LA now, and I've just been like working on listening, and like obviously I can kind of relate to some of the hate, just coming from, because I'm Black, my background and everything, like racism is alive and well. And just having the opportunity to be an ally is something I take pride in. So just being there just to listen, check in. And when all this stuff was happening, like I made sure to reach out to Taylor, see how he was doing and stuff like that. But I've noticed just about the Asian community, it's very, very tight knit. Like Pisa had said, they're really big on family. tradition, and they just care about people, and they just want people to do the same towards them. I think that's the biggest thing. And it's great to see. I love them speaking up because they deserve to, and I'm listening. So.
Thank you. That's such great stories that you're sharing, and we really definitely appreciate that. And I think every ethnic community group, we're definitely big on sharing and being family oriented and being welcoming. And so, yes, props to that. Benny, how would you describe the Asian American Pacific Islander culture here in Los Angeles? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's an interesting question because like it's tough because like when you know the AAPI community is just so diverse. You know, we're not a monolith. You know, we're made up of like so many different cultures and backgrounds. And you know, sometimes my issue with is that oftentimes the term AAPI we get kind of lumped together, right? And it's easy to be like, oh yeah, you guys are all the same and what have you, right? But I think that in terms of like, I can really speak on in terms of LA culture, especially with the Asian American community. I think that I think food plays a big part in it. You know, I'm in the food space. You know, I have a fish market that I'm a partner at, in Sherman Oaks, and it's interesting because like, all the restaurants, a lot of them are minority owned, and we all kind of have each other's backs, and, we all kind of take care of each other. And especially like during these tough times, I mean, I think just last week, there was like a big list of, minority owned restaurants that really just got together for like a whole week just to, sell food and raise funding to help with Stop AAPI Hate. And I think that's really incredible. And to see that sort of community coming together, especially during these tough times, I think that's like just so like beautiful to me, and I think that I think that right now, when you look at social media, it's really easy to kind of look at the comments and everything and just assume that everyone hates each other and that we're not moving forward, But for me, I like to focus on the people who are, trying to bring people together, who are trying to, focus on all the positives and making that contribution. Because at the end of the day, we all want change, right? Like, and every minority group, they deal with their own challenges, and some have been fighting for hundreds of years, and they still are fighting to this day, And so I think what we need to understand is that, change takes a lot of time, and it doesn't rest upon one individual. It takes all of us to really kind of come together and to make the sacrifices that we need to in order to move our, community forward, not just for us. I mean, it might not be the massive change might not happen in our generation, but, I do the things I do because like, I want a better world for, my children and my children's children. And I think that for us as citizens of the world, I mean, that should be, our, one of our responsibilities, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, one day at a time, right? One day at a time. And hopefully we can see more change in our lifetime now than later on. Switching over to Pisa, you played college football in Hawaii, and now you live in Southern California. Tell us your experience from Hawaii and being part of the Pacific Islander community, which we don't talk about. And like what Benny said, we're such a diverse group. We would love to hear you share some stories about that.
Well, and you guys might know, it's different the closer you get back to the islands where things are more traditional, things are, some would call old school. So my grandfather joined the military, and that's how we were able to get to the mainland. Samoa was U.S. territory. He joined and was shipped around Midway, ended up in Long Beach. We had a small community, and then ended up down towards Camp Pendleton, and he was doing his civil service on Camp Pendleton. So the interesting thing is like Samoan. So my mom was born in the States. I grew up in the 90s. So I grew up in Southern California where, by that time, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre was getting big. And so there was part of the community that was choosing to live like it was around California, I guess, with the gangs and, trying to do that. And then there's the other sides that were athletes. So fortunately for me, I saw that where the gangs led to, and I thought, all right, I can't do that. I better do the sports. And fortunately it worked out, took me to Hawaii. And what I learned there was the Samoans and the Polynesians were way different on the island in Hawaii than they were in California. I felt like it was the aloha spirit, they call it, or it was very genuine. And I felt like growing up in San Diego, it was people said they were real close, but you had to be careful. It wasn't for free. Whereas in Hawaii, it was just unconditional. They didn't want anything back. They just truly wanted me to succeed because they knew, all right, this is why you're out here, because you got in trouble in the States. So you ended up out here. So I saw just a different side of our culture, which actually made me happy and proud because, I thought I saw and I thought I knew, because all I knew was my family. And I saw some of the stuff that was going on, trying to make it in the US, and we knew, hey, you can't live like how you do on the island. I used to hear my grandpa say that, but, so trying to juggle all that. So it was kind of good for me to get back to Hawaii and see that, they have the small island mentality and not in a bad way, more just community based and love and true, authentic, just come here, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about that. And, for me, it was a eye opener in a good way. And that was something I embraced. So when I got back to the States and I was in St. Louis, I wanted to make sure, and even now to this day, I want to make sure that that is apparent with the culture. And that's the side of the, Polynesian side I want to show, not this, we get into fights and we're beating people up. It's like, no, we're love-based, we're community-based. And that's where I want our reputation to stay, because I feel like it's naturally innate in a lot of us. And that's why whenever we see each other, it's kind of like, hey, just a nod. It's a respect thing, but it's also just a love thing that, all right, we can do this. We're in it together.
That's great, because now we can transition into the next topic about, allyships and partnerships. And so that's, what you just said, Pisa, is so important about what's happening right now. And so if we can ask Benny, as we fight to stop Asian hate, what recommendations do you have for looking into making a difference? And how can we better have, our communities be better allies for our AAPI communities?
I think that the first step is to, really kind of look at history, right? And I kind of go back to this topic over and over again. And, you see online, it's easy to think that everything is so divisive, right? But the reality is, a lot of the history, American history, like especially for people of color, they've been erased from history books, And if you really do look back and do the research, right, even as like, hundreds of years, as far back as that, there's been so many, key figures that really set the groundwork for a lot of the rights that we have today, like Frederick Douglass, one of the biggest figures, in American history, right? He advocated for Chinese and Japanese immigration, during the civil rights movement, with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. There was two very key Asian American figures, Asian American women, Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs, who fought hand in hand during that movement. And during in 1982, you had during the murder of Vincent Chin, Jesse Jackson lobbied to try to make sure that the perpetrators and the family got the justice that they deserved. And even for me, I have a platform. NextShark is a large platform, and we reach a lot of Asian Americans. And last year we were very much on the cusp of covering the Stop Asian Hate and talking about a lot of these incidences that have been happening. But then when Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd were murdered, right? The first thing I was thinking about was what can I do? And the first thing I did was I reached out to Leslie Raymond. She's the president of the NAACP over in Minneapolis. And she was like, hey, we could use some amplification on some of these GoFundMes to help, our communities and for, volunteers that are trying to, keep the neighborhood safe. And, for us, for a good, I think 6 months, the front page of NextShark was all Asians for Black Lives Matter resources, whether it's to help the victims, where to donate to, translations, especially if you wanted to explain why Black Lives Matter is important, to your Asian parents that, might not speak English, right? And so I think that it's more so important that we all realize that we have been helping each other, communities have been helping each other, and I don't see why we can't, and we can continue doing it. Our ancestors, our American ancestors laid those groundworks for us, right? And I think that once you know that there's precedent, it makes knowing the direction you want to go a lot easier, right? So that's really what I would have to say about it. But it takes listening to each other. It takes having civil discourse with each other. And also on top of that is that your fight, you may, every minority group, again, they have their own challenges, but one of the things that people also need to realize is, when a minority group really stands up to fight for their own rights, they're also indirectly fighting for the rights of all minorities moving forward.
That's great. That's definitely great. Big words, Benny, and your stories and collaboration and partnerships. It's really important. And like you said, it's really important to definitely educate, communicate, and advocate for all. At the end of the day, it's like you said, the next generation is going to be affected. Jordan, you've been very outspoken and supportive of the Stop Asian Hate movement. What have you learned recently about being an ally to our community?
When I think of being an ally, I just think of how would I want to be treated if I was in that position. I mean, and I don't want to say luckily, but I have been, so it's kind of easy for me to translate how I should be an ally to those who are close to me, So I think like just leading with love is really, really important. It kind of gets lost nowadays. A lot of people it's just natural for humans to just focus on the negative. But I think there is a lot of love out there, and kindness and everything like that. And I think we just need to focus on that and just love more, honestly. And like listening, like Benny said, it's important. And being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is important too. And try to like really, really understand how they feel. Like obviously you're not gonna get all the way there, but learning about history and their culture and how they go about things, their values, stuff like that. I think it's just really, really important, especially if you're on teams or work with people who are AAPI descent. It's just important. Just like as a whole, as like a human race, I think we just need to take advantage of this time to learn more, love more, and just be there for each other, honestly, because it's been a hard time since 2020. We're still trying to dig our way out of it. But yeah, I think that's what's important at the end of the day.
Thank you, Jordan. Definitely love, compassion, sharing experiences, and communication. Thank you. Last question for everybody here, and focusing here with Pisa. What do you want your Rams fans to know about the AAPI community? What would you like to share?
Sheesh. What would I want them to learn is, I think I said this earlier about, Jordan said that leading with love. I like that because, I think sometimes you see people and you automatically assume certain things about them. And it's like, and I, so I feel it too. I feel sometimes like people want to say hi, but I'm like, am I not smiling enough? Am I turning people off? And then I start getting my own head thinking like, okay, well, they don't like me because I don't know, it's just, but even like a simple hi, just acknowledging people, I feel like it's such a respect thing. And if I want to share like, and you said this earlier, Benny, was that, the respect, it was just like, it's pretty paramount in our culture, and I think all cultures, it's, you're born with how you're born. And so you can't control that. And so you learn to play with the cards you have. And I think being brown, I always thought was a superpower because I could hang out with white people. I could hang out with black people. But then somebody told me, yeah, but you're brown, you're not white and you're not black. And I thought, wow, that's a great point. But I still love people. Like I still care about people. So I'll just lead with that because I feel like, representing your cultures and your heritage is important. And that's all they're going to know about you. If they have a good experience with me, because I treated them like I would treat my kids or my brother, then I think that's super important. And leading with love, I kind of like that, Jordan. So I'll go ahead and embrace that. Just say hi and acknowledge people, and you might learn something that you never knew. And if we're going to listen and we're going to learn, then I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, all of us were home last year for COVID, right? Not an experience that we all want to repeat, right? So if we're going back out in the community slowly, let's do the hellos. Let's say, what's up? How are you doing? Let's
Right.
go out and support the businesses, especially the ethnic ones, and diversify ourselves with food. And food makes us happy. So let's all go out there. Let's be peaceful. Let's be happy. Let's reintroduce ourselves again. So with that, I wanted to thank on behalf of the LA fans with the Rams. We want to thank Benny, Pisa, and Jordan. So I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys all.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.